right up here.
Oh, we're up.
Oops, 3 minutes? Oh, no, guess not.
Good evening. Welcome to the Monday, September 9th Muscatine Community School District Board of Education meeting. Madam Secretary, would you take roll and help us determine a quorum, please?
You bet. Director DeBeat,
Here.
Draba,
Here?
Finn,
Here.
Mather,
Here.
McCarter,
Here.
Neighbor,
Here.
Wildermuth.
Here.
A quorum is present.
Thank you. If you would all please stand and join me in the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to welcome all of our visitors that are joining us this evening, as well as our media representatives. Our next agenda item is an update from our student council.
And they're in.
And maybe they're all at the Powder Puff game. It's a busy homecoming week, so we certainly understand if our student council membership is not here for an update. The next item on our agenda is the Citizen Speaks portion of the agenda. This is where any audience member should feel free to step to the podium and you may address the board. We do limit your comments to 3 minutes. Please know that this is also an opportunity to address the board, but it is not a conversation with the board. So we will not be engaging in conversation, but are certainly interested if anyone would like to approach the board. When you step to the podium, we would also ask that you state your name and your address for the record as well, so that our board secretary can capture that.
Gabby Dennis, 2002 Logan Street, apartment C4. Right. My name is Gabby Dennis. My family and I moved to Muscatine from Atlanta when I was in the 3rd grade. Muscatine was a very big contrast from what I was used to. I didn't know what to expect since I was thrown into a new state, a new community, a new school. I found myself fitting in more with the Muscatine kids than I did where I grew up. Honestly, I don't have very good memories of Atlanta, I'm sorry. Muscatine suits me more, despite the very few kids that look like me. Beginning my senior year at MHS, I reflect on the many advantages and opportunities I have enjoyed. I can't imagine what Susan in the 1860s and in a different cultural climate had to go through day by day. Naming the junior high after Susan Clark is significant to me because it shows that the community members care. The junior high kids deserve to know that their school has significance. Giving students the opportunity to learn her story brings awareness to Muscatine's past. The majority of the citizens of Muscatine aren't aware of what an important figure Susan Clark was. Her voice needs to be heard. Most of our elementary schools are named after presidents. I think that naming our junior high in honor of Susan would be unique. It's a reminder of Muscatine's place in history and the impact of one young, courageous girl in securing equal access to public education for all children, regardless of their color, race, or religion. I urge the members of the school board to vote in favor of naming our junior high school after Susan Clark. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabby.
Gabby or Abby?
Is there anyone else that would like to approach the board?
My name is Paul Thielman. I live at 1500 Oak Street in Muscatine. I have a statement of my own to read, but I'm primarily here to read a letter written by Dr. Paul Finkelman, who is an expert in legal history and civil rights history, who has been a very important person in the establishment of the Alexander Clark Foundation, and actually has done a great deal of work here with this community as far as identifying Clark and his importance. I'll start by identifying myself. As I said, I'm Paul Thielman. I've lived in Muscatine since August of 1976. I'm a lifelong educator, having worked as a high school social studies teacher, secondary school library media specialist, substitute teacher in the Muscatine schools, and for 5 years I was an adjunct history instructor at Muscatine Community College. I hold a BA in History and Political Science from Western Illinois University with concentrations in African and African American studies. I will now read the bulk of the letter from Dr. Finkelman, which hopefully will take just over 3 minutes, and then I'll finish my final minute with remarks. Dear members of the Muscatine School Board, I regret that I cannot personally appear before the school board. I live in Philadelphia, where I am the president of a small college, that's Gratz College, and I simply cannot make it to this important meeting. Thank you for letting me join you through this letter. I am a PhD historian, and I have spent much of my life writing about the history of race relations in the United States, including a number of articles on the history of race relations and the anti-slavery movement in Iowa. I have spoken many times in Iowa at universities and colleges, at the State Historical Society, and at public events. My historical scholarship has been cited by the Iowa Supreme Court and in 5 separate decisions by the United States Supreme Court. For much of the last decade, I have worked with people in Muscatine to promote the historical importance of Alexander Clark. Last year, I was invited to give the keynote address at a Drake Law School conference on the 150th anniversary of the Iowa Supreme Court decision in Clark v. Board of Directors of Muscatine Schools. As I am sure you all know, this was the first decision in the United States to prohibit racial segregation in a public school. The Iowa Supreme Court based this decision on the state's constitution and laws. This was a very proud and significant moment for Iowa. It helped make the state a, quote, bright star, unquote, in the quest for liberty and equality in the United States. And parenthetically, I'll say the phrase bright star was actually used by Frederick Douglass in discussing this case when it came down in 1868. In the Clark case in 1868, the Iowa Supreme Court said that the Iowa Constitution prohibited the creation of separate schools for black people and that public schools could not refuse to admit black children to what were all-white schools. The court noted that Iowa law required that all children were entitled to attend public schools and that all means all. The court wisely declared that the people of Iowa are one harmonious people with a common culture, country, and common purpose, and all children in the state were entitled to the same access to public schools without regard to where they came from or how long ago their ancestors came to the United States. This is an extraordinary lesson for then and now. Through the Clark case, Muscatine and Iowa led the nation on the road to racial equality. Iowa would never return to segregation, even if some communities in the state tried to resist or avoid this outcome. But Iowa led the way, and in subsequent cases, the Iowa court used the Clark case to provide equality throughout the state. The Hawkeye State led the nation, and the court in the Clark case led Iowa. Given this history, it is enormously appropriate to name a school for Susan Clark. Her father, Alexander, led the state and the nation and fought for equality. But his young daughter, Susan, needed the courage to be the only black child in the high school where she was under a microscope of scrutiny. We know she met this challenge as she went through high school and through life. I can think of few easier decisions for a school board: to enshrine a great event in the city and state, and to reaffirm Iowa's century-and-a-half commitment to equality and fairness. Thank you for your time and your willingness to hear from me. And as a member of a school board who has such an enormous responsibility in educating the nation, I thank you and salute your service to Muscatine, the state of Iowa, and the United States of America. Yours, Dr. Paul Finkelman, President and Professor of History, Gratz College. Concluding, I just want to say that the abolishment of slavery in 1865, with the end of the Civil War, was followed by 100 years of conscious exclusion and segregation of African Americans. Our country's black citizens resisted the redemption movement, which sought to do away with the great gains they made through Reconstruction, throughout the post-Civil War era, with varying degrees of success and failure. Among the first of these successes was the case of Clark v. Board of Directors of Muscatine Schools, and the plaintiff in that case was one Susan Clark. This was a precedent-setting case that has been cited often in U.S. Supreme Court cases concerning civil rights. This is our moment to memorialize the ideals represented by Susan Clark, a brave, young, female, teenaged African American who boldly went where none had successfully gone before. After her right to attend the public schools in Muscatine was confirmed, she acquitted herself with distinction, graduating from Muscatine High School with honors and living a life of commitment and service as Mrs. Richard Holly, the wife of a prominent pastor in the African Methodist Episcopal Church, and as a citizen in Cedar Rapids and Chicago at a time when women were denied the right to vote. I hope you will take this opportunity to shine a bright light on the historical record on Muscatine schools, our city, and the state of Iowa by voting unanimously to name our junior high school for the courageous Susan Clark.
Thank you, Paul. Is there anyone else that would like to approach for citizen speak? Paul did ask ahead of time if he could have his 3 minutes to read his letter and 3 minutes to for himself. So if you were watching the clock, that's how we did that.
Good evening. My name is Annette Hovland, and I live at 1914 Mulberry Avenue. I am a teacher in the Muscatine School District. My husband and I have lived here for 25 years, and both of our children are graduates of Muscatine High School. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you again. Susan Clark's incredible story of bravery is part of our history. Unfortunately, given its impact on our state and our country, it is not well known or celebrated. Recent research has uncovered that in 1865, Susan and her sister and brother attempted to attend a public school in Muscatine, but were turned away. Discouraged but not defeated, Susan tried again 2 years later. It would take a landmark Iowa Supreme Court ruling, but Susan's determination secured the right of all children, regardless of race, color, or religion, to attend Iowa public schools. Susan's story, her legacy, is one that gives us strength, courage, and hope. Her name above the door of our junior high school would be a beacon, a promise of what is possible when we work hard and never accept defeat. What a positive message for our school children. I hope the members of the school board will follow Susan's example. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to step forward for citizen speak? Okay. The next item on our agenda is under Board Targets Goals Report. And Jerry, I think you have a start of the school year update
We
for us.
do. This year we had a lot of change. We had the Muscatine Early Learning Center open up with 200 plus 3 and 4 year olds. Our 6th graders stayed in the elementary buildings this year. The 2 middle schools are a little bit quieter than they have been probably for a while. And our high school is moving along as to be expected. But I thought tonight would be good because the elementaries and the preschool program have had so much change that it would be good if they could give you a little bit of an update on how the year started. And then they'd be available for any questions the board might have about the startup. So principals, I would ask you to step forward.
Good evening. Thanks for inviting us and having the opportunity to share some of our highlights at the elementary level. I'm Stacy Olson, and I am the newest member of this amazing elementary team. I couldn't ask to be part of a better team. They are amazing and supportive. I'm going to highlight, is this my clicker, Scott? Awesome. There we go. I'm going to highlight our Muskie family night that we had last Thursday from 5 to 7. We had 4 sessions that parents could select from. They got to go to their grade level classrooms, and they got to hear about curriculum updates, standards, daily schedule, behavior expectations, attendance expectations, and then the Google presentation included slides of staff members that would be interacting with their kiddos. As you can tell, it was a win-win because the parents got to go to these sessions undistracted because their children went to the library for childcare. We were lucky to have some high school kids who needed some silver cord hours come, and they played Legos, they colored, they read stories, they did puzzles, and none of the kids wanted to leave when their parents picked them up. So that was a success. We also offered pizza, cookies, and water, and as you can tell the smiles, the pizza and cookies were delicious. And it was a great opportunity for our families to come and to see what we had offered, to interact with our parents, to teachers, and it was a fun night by everyone.
Stacy, will you remind us which building you're at?
Mulberry.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm at Mulberry.
Perfect.
Okay. So I'm excited to talk a little bit about technology. And the nice thing about, whether it's the Muskie home visit or technology, we all have the same resources at hand. We were able to get this great opportunity to have interactive smart boards. So all of our classrooms, and I'm sorry, I'm Julie Stone King at Franklin Elementary, got to back up a little bit, but we all got interactive smart boards in all our classrooms, new Chromebooks and iPads iPads are for K 1-2, grades 1 and 2, and then 3rd through 6 got the Chromebooks. We are really, the center picture here just displays the interactive smartboard that we were normally use. Right now it shows a passage. It's hard to see that, but it's one of those things where it offers a lot of different opportunities for our teachers and students to use. In the past, we might use a document camera to display certain things in our curriculum, but now we don't need that anymore because we have the interactive smartboards that can do anything. It can do the displaying, it can do manipulation of objects and using our curriculum in order to do that. We don't have to worry about replacing light bulbs anymore, like it's all built in here. And for those in the administration, replacing light bulbs and all that is like a costly factor. And we're excited that we have everything built into one. We also have a lot of really good opportunity for professional learning as well. There's a lot that we can do with this. We're just scratching the surface right now, but we're really excited, our teachers and students, to learn more about the opportunities ahead. With that, we also received thank you letters that we wanted to give out to the school board members. This comes from Madison Elementary School, and it has a lot of thank you notes for supporting our students with this new technology in all our buildings. So I'll just pass this around for you because it's for you.
Thank you.
Okay, so what's the check? Okay, Scott, thank you.
I was afraid, Leslie, you broke the technology.
That would have been my luck.
I'm Leslie Bennett. I am the principal at Grant Elementary, so thank you for having us. I'm going to talk a little bit about 5th and 6th grade at the elementary school, and specifically what we call essentials. There was a team that met last year to organize the transition of 6th graders, or I guess the keeping of 6th graders in the elementary schools, and we wanted to make it as seamless and smooth as possible, yet at the same time offering a somewhat different experience for 5th and 6th grade that was somewhat unique to those grade levels. And one of those things that we did was create something that we're calling essentials. So at elementary, you might be aware, we often have what we call specials, which is art, music, and PE. So 5th and 6th graders have the opportunity this year at all of our elementary schools to not only participate in art, music, and PE, but they have a wide selection, or I guess I should say a wide variety of other electives, if you will, that they get to participate in as 5th and 6th graders. So a list of those is up on the board there in the presentation. Not only do we have art, physical education, music, we now offer STEAM through Project Lead the Way. Band, chorus, and orchestra are all available to 5th and 6th graders now. I think all schools have agriculture, and some schools offer leadership through a guidance class, and some offer a health and fitness course. So not all students get to do all of these things, but they get to do 6 of them throughout the school year. So 5th and 6th graders did have some choice. They got to choose if they wanted to do band, chorus, or orchestra, and any combination of those 3. And what was left, they kind of got put in a variety of the other options just to get a taste of what would be coming and available to them in middle school and high school, and to kind of give them some exposure to some of those things before they got to secondary. So far, we had to work out all the kinks with scheduling, and something that was a little new for elementary school anyway, and we had to be very creative with sharing of staff. Middle school teachers, high school teachers are coming down to help teach some of those courses. So that took a lot of organization, but we've been very successful. And I think it was all worth it, because I think all of us have heard back from our students at all of our buildings are really embracing this and are really enjoying this. And I've gotten some feedback that they feel like they have some independence, but not too much independence at 5th and 6th grade. But they are really enjoying it, and it is going well so far.
Thanks, Scott. I'm Candy Steele, principal at Jefferson Elementary, and I'm going to talk a bit about the professional learning that occurs behind the scenes. So we know that you put a child with a great teacher, great things happen. And as principals, we know that one of our most important responsibilities is to create the conditions for our teachers to be successful. So at the beginning of the year and throughout the year, teachers are offered time for professional learning. Teachers are given time to reconnect to our vision and to study together to develop instructional strategies and techniques that better help them in better meeting the needs of the students. It is more important than ever for our educators to be prepared to support students' social, emotional, mental health and well-being, and academic needs. Tonight, we'd like to take a minute to acknowledge, recognize, and celebrate our entire staff for their hard work and dedication in preparing for the upcoming school year. They did a lot of really good work at the beginning of the year to prepare. Because of them, our children will continue to achieve at great levels in Muscatine. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. So my name is Stephanie Zillig. I serve as the principal at Madison Elementary, and I'm just here to share some of the traditions that we have worked on at the beginning of this school year by blending several new staff members and a lot of students. It's been a great opportunity for us to add some new traditions to Madison that were at Colorado and other schools. And I wanted to show you, that is a picture of Madison's running club. And if you know Becky Ezerhat, she is amazing. And one of the best things about this blending or this merging of Colorado and Madison has been the consistency of staff members. So we were able to bring over staff members that the students already knew. They were familiar with their PE, art, and music teacher. They were familiar with their GT teacher. Several teachers came over, one that they'd had in kindergarten, one that they'd had in first grade, so they were able to see familiar faces from day one, and that's been really beneficial in helping ease that tradition and transition. So Running Club is one of the brainchilds of Becky E., and that's an example of a tradition that existed at Colorado that has now been brought to Madison. A new tradition is the beginning of Mileage Club. So not only do students who opt to run on Fridays after school, they can run during their recess. And they have ran, just in last week, over 46 miles. And that's only a week into Mileage Club. So we're pretty excited that our students are active during their recess. And that's just one example of some of those new traditions that we're excited to start. We're continuing things like art club, and we have a choir group called Music Makers that meets. But those are some examples of ways that we can help ease that transition for new students and new family members. When parents see that there's a familiar face, whether it be in the office or whether it be just down the hall, that makes those transitions easier for all involved. And so we're really thankful that those staff members were able to come and join the Madison staff, because that's been a really successful way to blend those two. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Joelle McConaughey, principal at McKinley, and I'm just going to share a little bit about Muskie home visits. All of our staff at our elementary schools visited or made a contact with all of our families before the start of the school year. The Muskie home visit was really just to welcome all of our families to the start of the school year, answer any questions they might have. The kids get really excited to have their teachers at their house. One quote from a little boy named Jake said, "I think it's pretty cool that my teacher came to my house. It makes me feel special." And some of our parents that we talked to after home visit said, "As a parent, I love seeing the teacher in a different setting. It feels like communication is much more open and less intimidating moving forward." And another parent said, "I think the home visits have been extremely beneficial to both families and teachers. My kids both get excited to have their teacher come to our house and are able to begin building that relationship before the first day of school starts." So we really felt strongly that our Muskie welcomes made a big impact, not only just for our families, but for our staff and teachers as well.
All right, and I am going to finish up, but I don't, oh, it already moved. Scott, did you do that for me? Yes. Thank you. All right, well, I'm Jessie Freers. I'm the principal at the Muskie Early Learning Center. So I'm just going to kind of finish by sharing how things are going in our building, which is obviously a very different building from the 6 previous ladies, because we have only 3- and 4-year-olds with us all day. And so, you know, anticipating that can be difficult because you're not quite sure, and every year will be different because 3- and 4-year-olds are very unpredictable at times. But for the most part, things have gone really, really well. We had probably more parent criers than student criers on the first day, which is very different from an elementary building. But everybody has adjusted really, really well. Parents seem to be very satisfied with dropping their kiddos off. You know, they're not nervous any longer. They know that they're in good hands. Our staff has been amazing at just readjusting schedules, which we've done quite a bit. You know, those first few days, they were getting about 10 emails from me a day on, you know, we need to change this or we need to change that, having some staff meetings. But things are going really well. So we hope that you're all able to join us on September 19th, next Thursday. We will be doing a community open house. And I apologize, I had flyers for all of you, which are sitting on my desk at work. But it's from 4:30 to 6:30, and we're just going to take that opportunity to show the community and our families all of the great things that we're doing. We'll have some scavenger hunt activities for you to kind of search and find out some of the cool things that we're doing. So if you have any questions for any of us, we are open to answering questions.
Jesse, I bet if you send a copy of that flyer to Lisa, she'll make sure that it gets emailed
Yes,
out.
she has a copy of it.
Perfect.
So she will email it.
Perfect.
Jesse, would you like to share your visitor who came last week?
Yes, yep. So Congressman Loebsack came for a visit. So you might have seen in Discover Muscatine, they had kind of covered him. So he came and did a walkthrough, kind of learned a little bit about our district. And we were able to advocate for some of those early childhood services that we hope the state will continue to fund and maybe fund a little bit better.
Jesse, how many students do you have in the building now?
We have 230, so 230 3- and 4-year-olds. Wow. We haven't had our first fire drill yet, though. We'll see how that goes.
I'll let you know when I'm going to be out of town.
I actually had an associate tell me I'm going to be sick on that day.
Well, I would like to say that Muscatine kids are in good hand. We have amazing principals here and also amazing staff. I myself attended, back to school event, and I felt like I'm among my family members. So thank you for everything you do. Thank you.
Yeah, this has been a year of unprecedented change in our district. And from a board perspective, or at least from my perspective, a lot of really exciting change. But I can't thank each one of you enough, and all of your staff in every building that has been so accommodating to make it all happen. Because I know, we all know, we've asked for a lot of different things this year, and you all have executed in an amazing way. So thank you for that.
Did any of you feel like you had one of those opening day, I wish I would have done this differently and we're going to make a change? Or how did that process go?
We probably would all say it went awesome, but don't bring up dismissal for any of us. But other than, the beginning of the year with some changes and just the normal kinds of things, I feel like we've had a lot of conversation and done a lot of sharing and collaborating, and we really feel great about the start of our school year. And we don't do it alone, obviously. We have amazing staff that help them. Unless you guys had one of those days.
There were a lot of really big smiles when that question came.
It's just because we had a lot of discussion around dismissal.
And
It's
all
a,
I will say is how it's very hard to get into traffic on 8th Street between certain hours of the day. Morning, about 7:45 to 8:30, and from about 3:05 to about 3:45. So I don't park in that area during those times.
One of the problems that I think all of our buildings, for the most part, have is they were built at a time when kids walk to school. And they really aren't designed very well for heavy traffic flow. And so I know we'll have do some work at Colorado to try and alleviate some of that. But Jesse's done a really nice job to move things along as well as possible. So.
The computer crying on the back.
Did you have a question? No. All right. Ladies, thank you all very much. I'm correct, and that's all for our board targets,
Yes,
correct? All right,
yes.
so we're going to circle back because I understand we have our student council is here.
Nice.
And we are all anxious to hear about what's happening for homecoming week, or whatever details you're going to share with us.
All right, first off, I want to say I'm really sorry. We went to the wrong building.
It's all good. We're glad you're here.
All right, so homecoming is early this year, as probably a lot of you know, and it's actually this week. And our theme, overall homecoming theme, is Disney. And earlier today, we hosted our Coronation Luncheon for all the homecoming candidates, which I'm one of them, so I participated in it. It was really nice. And right now, actually, as we speak, the juniors and seniors are versing each other. The junior and senior girls are versing each other in the Powder Puff football game. And it's $5 to get in, and proceeds will go to the worldwide the World Wildlife Fund. And then this Thursday, we have the homecoming parade at 6, starting in front of Grant. And then, after that, there will also be the coronation, of course. And then on Friday, seniors are gonna, we have senior march, and then after that, we'll put our handprints on our senior wall, which stays up there for a year, and then it gets repainted. And it says senior march. We go to the riverfront and we raffle prizes, which I had no idea that happened. And then at the end of the school day, we'll have our homecoming pep assembly, and that's gonna include staff pie in the face contest. And then afterwards, we're gonna have a car smash, and the cars was donated by Kriegers. And 40% of the proceeds from both of the pie contest and car smash are gonna go to the Ocean Project, which helps clean up our world's oceans and coastlines. And finally, on Saturday, we're going to hold our annual homecoming dance in the gym from 8 to 11.
The following are the homecoming candidates for homecoming 2019. We have Tanner Cook, Ronnie McCoy, Marcos Batista, Sam Wieskamp, and Joaquin Bobet in the males category. In the females category, we have Hannah Reynolds, Cindy Cox, Hannah Wieskamp, Emily Wopking, and Olivia Bastin. In addition to all these homecoming activities, we also had a Muskie Spirit themed back to school night on New Muskie Day, when there was a big hit and helped us raise funds for homecoming week. We are very, very excited over at Student Council for all the fun activities that we have planned this homecoming season. And we are excited to report it back to the board when we have the chance next month. Thank you.
Gentlemen, before you slip away, will you tell us your names?
Oh, sorry. I'm Marcos Batista.
And I'm CJ Palmer.
Marcus and CJ, thank you very much. You have a big and exciting week ahead of you. Enjoy it.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you.
I want you guys to know I've gone to this wrong building before too, so it happens to the best of us.
Next on the agenda are action and possible action items. The following items are considered to be routine by the Board of Education and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless the director so requests, in which the event item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered in its normal sequence from the agenda. Those items are minutes, employment recommendations, bills and claims, student teaching agreements. Takes us through letter E on the agenda, for those that have an agenda in front of them. What are the wishes of the board?
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as presented. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion carries. The next item on the agenda is a request for a release from a teaching contract post May 20th, 2019, which was the date those contracts were due. Jerry, do you have a little more information on that for us?
Yeah, Ms. Voss asked for release Friday. She had been offered a position in Davenport. Davenport is doing some late hiring, I think probably in part because they had riffed so many folks, and I think finding what they can get back and is probably taking them some time. Obviously, I would not recommend a release. I don't think it's a good thing for our students or for the district to try and hire teachers in September.
What are the wishes of the board?
Jerry, a question. There are certain policy exceptions that are written in that policy, and I'm trying to remember them, and I'm failing off the top of my head. Could you go over them and tell us if they've been met?
I'm sorry.
So, as I recall, there's one of the reasons that's given in the policy is the board would consider like if we have someone waiting to fill or able to fill the position.
Well,
there's another thing, as I recall, as well.
Yeah, if they're after May 20th,
Right.
if there's a suitable replacement, that the board can consider that. The board's not required to release anyone, but that would be the, after that, it's going to be kind of the standard of if there's a replacement available.
And there's
I don't think there's any other
I may be
exceptions.
misremembering it. There's no replacement here.
I would also say probably there's, if someone were to come and say, I have a spouse or family member that's in serious health conditions and I need to go a distance to take care of them, I think we would all do whatever we could for them. If someone said, my spouse has been relocated to New York and I would like to be able to be with them as soon as possible, I think we would do our best for that. We probably wouldn't be as interested in putting our kids in a difficult spot just to go down for a job 25 miles down the road.
And there's no replacement in the wings here?
No.
And I would move to.
And it's really hard to find.
Sure.
Music is another one of those. It's hard to find. And when you look for people in September, the pool is pretty thin.
Sure. Then I would move to deny the request.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to deny the request as presented. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of denying the request, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion to deny the request carries. The next item on the agenda is to approve the Mentoring and Introduction Consortium Agreement between the Mississippi Bend Area Education Agency and the Muscatine Community School District for the 2019-2020 school year.
I can give you some background on that.
Good.
This spring, some schools in the AEA area and AEA 9 looked at the need for how can we improve our mentoring for our new teachers, recognizing that it's really important that first and second year teachers get off to a good start. AEA is, they put together a program. Teachers from around the area could interview to become mentors, and they would have like a leave of absence from their district to be a mentor. They would then be able to return to that district when that assignment is over. There's a fee for those that each district would pay to have their first and second year teachers in the mentoring program. We had some teachers that interviewed for the mentoring. We didn't have any of ours selected, but we would have 4 from the consortium that would be working with our teachers. The intent of this is, because it's a program that comes with a cost because we're having to pay for the teachers that will be in our district. So that, I think it's $5,500 per first or second year teacher. That money would not be, we wouldn't want that to be a general fund expenditure, either TLC or perhaps TQ money or one of the other titles, but we would look for paying for that. I think the advantage we have here is we would have some people that would be able to mentor teachers that don't necessarily work with the teacher. And there's relationships are great in mentoring and in coaching. Friendships make it sometimes difficult. And so I think this can be a great opportunity for good questions on both sides of the desk on this, and we could be a real help for our new teachers.
So Jerry, what does the NTC in the NTC induction program standards and assessment stand for?
That's a good question. Becky, do you know? I don't know. It's not ringing a bell.
And I guess, how similar is this to what we used to do in our own mentoring and induction program that was, actually it won an award for being one of the better induction models. And I think that time, didn't it use Charlotte Danielson?
Yeah.
It's just, okay. Okay.
New Teacher Center, I guess it stands for.
I'm sorry?
New Teacher Center.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any danger that people who are trained up in our district would be poached by this program to become mentors elsewhere?
You know, I think I'm not sure I remember the years of experience you need in teaching before you can apply to be a mentor. So it wouldn't be, I don't think there would be anybody hired after the first or second year to become a mentor. Now, there's always, you know, good people are always going to be sought after. But the other side of it is we really want to make sure our first and second teachers get every chance to be successful, because a successful teacher has successful students. And our coaches have done this work, but they haven't been able to dedicate themselves the way that I think this program will. And we'll take a look at the end of the year. We'll see if it's not meeting what we need. We'll do something different. But it is an opportunity, I think, for us to be more intentional about getting this mentoring done.
Jerry, can I ask, you said none of our staff was selected this year, but if they were, and you said they got a leave of absence, what's that look like? Does that mean that they aren't in the classroom?
If teacher A from Muscatine would have been selected to be a mentor, then we would get that teacher's salary sent back to us by the consortium. So we're not out anything there. Then we would hire a replacement for that year, or whatever that term might be. But the intent is that no district is harmed by this, which is part of the reason why the per new teacher cost is a little bit high, because mentors are going to have a lot more experience in training, so they're going to be more expensive teachers to pay for on the salary schedule.
So,
Go ahead, John.
Go ahead. Thank you. Yeah, so after 2019, 2020, it's still up to us if we want to renew that and go, for example, for one more year or stop there.
Yeah, this should be, and unless, if I'm misspeaking, each contract, it's a 1 year.
It's a 1 year contract.
And so there would be, next year, we would either come forward saying, this has been great, we would recommend you do that again, or we would recommend we don't.
Okay, thank you.
I had two more questions. The first, I guess, do we have any evidence of improvements either to retention and/or performance? And the second question I have is, would this, be throwing yet another thing and too much onto new teachers' plates?
Those are good questions. I'll answer the last one first because it's the easiest.
Sure.
They already are doing mentoring, so it's not something that new teachers or first or second year teachers haven't been doing.
Okay.
And I'm not, I think the coaches have tried and worked really hard at this, but you'll have people that have been trained and that's the only thing they're going to be doing is mentoring. So we're hoping that we see some benefit from that. Nathan, the research would indicate that the better the mentoring program, that teachers will become more successful and will stay in the profession. They may or may not stay in a district, but they'll stay in the profession, which is one of the problems we're facing, is that people are leaving the profession. So I couldn't give you any stats. We're probably about somewhere between an 8 to 9% turnover, which is pretty common. It's actually fairly low for a demographic of our school size. But what we're finding is it's increasingly difficult to find teachers. There are fewer people going into it, and there's fewer people staying with it. So I think we have to be really proactive in this and do the best we can to support them.
In the past, if I remember correctly, Sue Johansson ran this program for the school district. And it was something like a lot of teachers leave in the first 3 years. And with mentoring, it holds them much longer. And I don't remember the numbers exactly, but it seems like over 5 years. So you want to do this.
What are the wishes of the board on this item?
Well, I move to approve the mentoring and induction agreement here.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the Mentoring and Induction Consortium Agreement between the Mississippi Bend Area Education Agency and the Muscatine Community School District for the 2019-2020 school year. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion carries. Our next agenda item is to set a public hearing on the proposed plans, specifications, proposed form of contract, and the estimated cost of said improvement for the MHS Storm Shelter project for Monday, October 14th at 7 p.m. at City Hall. I'm gonna guess before we do that, Jeff has some information he's gonna share with us.
Jeff has some information. The self-proclaimed architect of the year is here. And we wanted to give the board a little bit of where things are at and give a chance to the board to ask any questions prior to the hearing. So if there's any correction or any changes, there would be some time to make that work.
That might be more comfortable, but the microphone picks you up over there. I'm so sorry.
Brian will be my van away, so.
That is those words have never been spoken before.
Yeah. So as Jerry said, we're going to give you an update today on the storm shelter. That's interconnected to the science edition. If everybody remembers the requirements per code, they're required to have a storm shelter. Working with the city, we are not a pure 100% FEMA or ICC. We are a hardened shell, they call.
Did somebody fall?
Yes. Should I go check?
There were
Mike,
several other people
Mike,
out
would
there,
you
so
check,
maybe-
please?
Who went out?
I don't know.
Sounded like
Should I go?
Yeah, I think we're okay. There's several people out there, so.
Okay. So as I was saying, this is going to be an ICC 500 certified. We have some exceptions that the city is providing, so we don't have to do specific things like a generator. There are some other miscellaneous items that I'm not going to bore you with tonight, so it's not a full-fledged storm shelter, but there are requirements that we have to meet throughout the process. One of those is a peer review, so we'll design it, then we have to have another engineer look at it to make sure our design is appropriate for a storm shelter, and then we have to have special inspections. So there are a lot of hoops that we need to jump through. We need to make sure that 500 is our occupancy that we can hold within the shelter. So we're currently tracking at 520 occupants right now. And we had to work out the toilet count because there's a certain requirement for if so many people are in a certain area, how many toilet facilities are they going to use. So we're sharing the toilet facilities between the new shelter, the high school, the Van Heck Center. We're using a little bit of everyone to meet that requirement.
And the city was very gracious in working with us on that.
Right.
Do we know what the city is planning on charging us in permitting fees?
We will when we submit it, but I believe it was around $10,000.
So they are planning on charging us permitting fees?
Yep.
That is my
Has
understanding.
there been any attempt to ask them not to charge us permitting fees?
We could have that conversation again.
So there has been,
There's
it's been unfruitful?
Yeah, it sounds like everyone, every organization gets charged.
It was unsuccessful at McKinley and Science, let's just.
Understand, thank you.
So Vanna White up there. So you can see the high school pool is on the far left, just to give you orientation. The bleachers for the football stadium are upper to the right. And then we're putting the storm shelter nestled between there. And then we're creating a ticket booth at each end, which is in the red boxes, there and there. And then we have the concourse that connects the two ticket booths. We call it the concourse. So there's a large flat area where people can progress through. And then we have a plaza area, which is closer to the front towards the track. And that's where there's more viewing and connection to the football field and track and so forth. So one of the challenges with the site is there was a lot of grade differences, so we had to pick a level. The concourse is basically flat, and then we have to tier up plaza to make sure that we're getting everything at the appropriate levels.
Today's entrance is where at?
Right here.
Okay. So that's all the larger red boxes where it's green space today? Is that where
Yes, that's correct.
they would grill for the booster club? Okay.
Yep.
And Jeff, how far is the shelter from the main high school at that point?
It's approximately 30 feet.
30 feet from the edge of the building. How far from the nearest entrance?
From the nearest entrance is 100 feet max. So that's to the back door around the end. Okay. So the shelter consists of a team room, a concession area, toilet rooms, and then a single unisex toilet room on the far north. These are just some images looking from a bird's eye view, just to give you a better perspective. This is looking towards the football field, so you can start to see the ticket booths at each end, the storm shelter, and you can start to see the plaza, the seating area up closer to the track.
Can I, the ticket booths, will there be any sort of, I don't know, whatever, auto barrier or anything out in front of there?
Yes, we talked about bollards.
Okay.
So we were to space them evenly so an ambulance or emergency rescue vehicle can go in, but they'll be outside the ticket booth. This is the other view looking the other way. You can start to see the grades, so there'll be an elevated area at track level where there's potential for picnic tables and so forth, and there'll be some steps. And then we're trying to create three different types of spaces. So the concourse will be busy and active, connecting the two ticket booths, the concession area, the toilet rooms, et cetera. Then you'll have the middle area where there's more greenscapes, more people just hanging out. And then you have the upper level that are sort of the hardcore watching the football game or the track events. This is a view of the ticket booths.
That's cool.
And then this is another view looking, your back is to the track on this one, looking towards the concession stand, so you can start to see a little bit of the elevations and the grade changes and the general aesthetic of the building. So our next steps, the week of September 30th, we're going to print 95% construction documents for the district to review, make sure they're getting everything they want. Then we're going to come back to the board again on 10/14 to request to go out to bid. We're going to issue the bid documents the next day, and then we're going to have a bid opening on the first week of November. We're going to analyze those bids and then make a recommendation to the board on the 18th. And then assuming all goes well, we'll issue the contract and potentially start construction in December. And that's a little, you probably think it's middle of winter, how are we going to start construction? Well, the building's precast, so we just have to basically get the precast shop drawings to us, review them, and then get a spot in the big beds. So they make the big concrete walls off-site and then truck them here. So it's a production time, it's a lead time issue. So we'll start them in December, and then we'll get the panels sometime in March. So we'll open everything up when the snow's gone. Not that we're gonna have snow this summer or this winter. And then hopefully we're gonna coincide with an April/May substantial completion date, which coincides with the science, because this is part of getting the approval and the occupancy for the science. So it's all sort of interconnected. So with that, any questions?
This will change the traffic flow in the back.
Yeah.
Which in some
Traffic
ways
flow all the
will
way
help
around, not
the Van Heck Center. You won't have to have, kids wouldn't be crossing traffic at that stage. And I think Vanna has been working on some traffic flow.
We have a couple different options that we're looking at right now.
I have a question, and this might not be for you, but how do you decide who gets to be in the storm shelter and who doesn't?
It'll be similar to the way we do the other zones in the building. So that, the zone closest would go there, and other zones would go to the other safety areas. So it won't be a lottery. It'll just be if you're at that point in the day of these classes would go there. Yeah. It's certainly not an ideal situation. We did make it a little bit larger than what the city had kind of thrown out there, but we kind of felt like the reality of it, if it's during an event, 500 is probably a better number to have than 350 or whatever it was. And the other side of this, and Jeff mentioned, a team room, what we were worried about is building you know, $1 million operation there, and it's just sits empty most of the time waiting for a storm to happen. So football, track, those folks, there'll be a space in there they can use. It will not inhibit the storm shelter capacity, but it'll be right there by the field, so they can access for that kind of thing. But it's always kind of a struggle when you spend that kind of money to have a building that never gets used. And so we try to figure out what else can it be, how can it be used. So.
And then what about just having to go outside during a storm?
Yeah, it's not ideal. And you would, obviously we would hope that we would have enough time to get kids through that 100 feet or so. And you know, weather.
Are they making a call on site? I mean, whether they're going out there or not, or do they have to go?
Oh, well, you know, there's, you know, if someone said, "Oh my gosh, I'm not going out there," we would find someplace for them. We're not going to drag someone out there.
Yeah.
You know,
But I mean, you might have to not go out, right? But then we have a backup plan inside where that zone would normally go.
Right. Yeah. And that's our first responders in the community are really good at working with us where those safe zones are best in the building. So, you know, this is one of the things I hope and pray it never gets used for its purpose.
Jeff, do we have some sound deadening something in the works for that building? And if we do put 500 people in it and anybody needs to communicate, that becomes tough.
Yes, right now it is a big concrete box, so there's not any, it's not meant for acoustics, I guess. You're just trying to get as many people in there for protection. So right now, currently, there isn't acoustics. If there's an acoustic issue, you can always add sound panels or so forth.
Okay.
To piggyback.
That's a good point.
Off of Aaron's, in case of emergency, I would suspect the building, since it's concessions, restrooms will be closed up. How many, and it's 100 feet, how many entrances are we talking?
That's a Jeff question.
Oh, that is.
Coming out?
So there's one at the south end, Vanna. Can you go to the team room, south side?
Okay.
One there, and go up. There's one in the concession
Okay.
area.
Okay.
There's one out the back of the concession area.
Gotcha.
And then there's two into the toilet rooms.
Okay.
And then there's two actually up.
Okay. Thank you.
Is there only one room where they go, or do they go in all of that space?
All of them.
All of the
They can
restrooms
go-
included?
Yep. The restroom is technically part of the shelter.
So coming from the school to if you have to go in the far room, how far is that?
It's about, the whole building is about 100 feet in length.
About twice as.
Right.
And if that's the pool, the pool door is right there. Okay.
Yeah, but there's not a lot of attendance in the pool area. I mean, this will pull from the cafeteria and places like that, I assume?
Yeah, I know, we have not had the conversation with first responders where the zones would need to be, so I couldn't tell you.
We're wiring it for communication in the event of a storm or something like that.
Yeah, it'll have Wi-Fi, you know, that type of thing, and you know, and Tammy, as you asked your question, I thought, you know, we could put some speakers up so that you can, because there will be, one of the downsides today is everybody has a cell phone, and the downside to that is rumors can fly around on a cell phone pretty quickly. So, yeah, we'd want some way to probably supersede communication. So that's a really good thing, and I don't think that would be a difficult thing to do. Saying that from not knowing anything about construction, but.
No, there'll be the life safety systems, the fire alarm, everything else in there.
And then a lot of times in the concession stand area, you get boxes and pallets and all types of things all stacked around. Is that being accounted for, or?
So there's a gross to net square footage. So we account for a certain area as cabinets, and then we take that out, and the occupants still are around that. Now, if somebody fills the room with boxes, obviously that'll affect the occupants.
Yeah, that's gonna have to, especially
That's
even
gonna have to
with
be
team rooms,
monitored.
that's gonna have to be monitored with all of it, right?
But that's a
Yeah.
fire code thing, I'm guessing, yeah.
Well, and even I think if we can look at even whether it's really simple carpet or something that helps with that sound. I know where I work, we found just even a similar layout for 200 is, with adults, it is extremely loud and it's difficult even to try and account for people. So doesn't have to be fancy.
Right.
But I think just to help absorb that sound would be helpful, because at some point in time, you'll need to communicate with each other as well.
Right, even on a concession stand or just at a simple level.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Sorry, one more. Why not attach it to the building?
More expensive that way. You have to reinforce the existing building, because then you're connecting a building to another building that could fall, and the dynamics get a little different.
Yeah, I remember we had that conversation, and the requirements for this are so stringent that it probably would have added maybe another $1 million on it to add it to the building, because you'd have to reconstruct that entire, whatever it's hooked to, would have to be of that same caliber of
I mean, even a hall, like a covered hallway or whatever that would just go out there would require that much more money?
It's basically a 12-inch thick concrete wall is what you're building right now, so that's.
So they can go outside in nothing, but they can't walk in any form of covered
So the question, I
hallway?
think but that's a good question. Could you put a reinforced funnel, for lack of a better word, into the tunnel?
Tunnel,
into
roof, hallway,
Oh, yeah.
you put a roof out
But
there.
when you attach the building, is that where the trouble begins?
It does.
I'll leave an inch.
The tunnel is,
Yeah.
I guess, which door are you gonna, because that creates egress issues. If you're funneling people through a tunnel, then there's all sorts of, like, what happens if I'm in the tunnel in this way? So I love the idea. I'm just trying to find the appropriate location for it.
I think we all agree with you on it. It seems silly.
It seems,
But,
like, we're gonna send 500 kids out there in a storm to make it into all those rooms in the right required rooms and fit quickly. It seems difficult to me to make all that
Well,
happen.
once they get in, they should be relatively safe.
Yeah, but how do you,
From
which
the
ones,
building
who
to
goes
the-
where? Like, are you counting
Again,
how
well,
many
we'll
are
have,
going in?
there will have to be zones set up in there too. So if you're in room 1034 and that's where you go, the people in 1034 need to go, this is the place where we take our kids in there.
But I guess if it's consistently a filled room, but you're talking about PE and the pool and other places which don't always have the same count of students. So, I
Right.
just don't see how do you fill at the top and then come down, or like?
Yeah, that's probably where we'll rely on our first responders to help us with that.
And have they approved this as a storm shelter?
Yeah.
Mike Hartman's reviewed.
Yeah.
And they agree that it's, okay.
Aaron, the code is 1,000 feet away from the structure. We're 30, we're 30.
Okay.
So will we leave it unlocked all the time? I mean, how will they gain access?
Teachers will have their keys to that building.
Okay. So again, we'll just have to figure out, again, the staffing of making sure somebody's always there to open that for students to get in.
Is there a way that can be open
Electronic?
from the office when you go to, or going to a thing, it could be automatically, it could be remotely opened?
Yeah, I mean-
Because I think that would probably make sense, because
You could have
we can-
electronic strikes tied into your key fob system.
Yeah,
And then open certain times and.
Yeah.
That would make me feel better, because I'm thinking, because you can't practice this.
No.
And so if you had to get a key at that moment with 400 kids,
It's like every horror movie ever.
that's exactly right. I mean, I wouldn't want to be that teacher responsible for trying to.
Or, so every staff member would have access, ultimately,
If there's a storm.
to
you
that,
push
so
a
that you
button.
could, so you
Yeah.
can scan.
Or
and you get in.
it's open from the office.
Yeah.
Because the other side of this is, there's going to be, activities, games, marching band
Well, right.
contests, that we're gonna have to have access to. So that's a really good question, and I bet Jeff will be able to come up with a really good answer.
Sometimes they tie in the fire alarm system, so the fire alarm, you pull it, your doors are always open,
Ah,
you're running
yeah.
out there. So that's 9 times out of 10 how they do it. That's how we're planning on doing it, but.
That makes sense.
And I assume the usage is if the city sirens are sounded, so if NOAA sends out the call, that would be the only time we're using it. I mean, we're not using it at our own discretion to say, it looks like bad weather, let's send people out.
Yeah, we typically wait for it to go to a warning, and
Right.
take shelter kind of thing. So,
Any other questions for Jeff?
I move to set the public hearing as specified in the agenda.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to set the public hearing for October 14th, 7 PM here at City Hall. That will be to review the proposed plans, the specification, et cetera, for the MHS Storm Shelter Project. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion carries. Thanks, Jeff. The next item before the board is to select firms and set a date, time, and location for the superintendent search firms interviews / presentations. Lisa Bunn, our board secretary, sent out to everyone. There were 4 RFPs that were received, there were 4 responses to the RFP that were received within the time frame. There was 1 additional that went out to the board, but it did come in about 24 hours, give or take, after the time frame. Our next steps as a board are, 1, to determine if we want to use a search firm, which I think issuing the RFP, we did make that decision. Who would you like to speak to out of those that you received?
If I can start the discussion without making a motion.
Yes.
When you look at these on paper, they all meet our basic needs. But we all know how well someone writing a document can present themselves. I would really like us to be able to have the opportunity to directly address someone from the different firms that have responded. And I don't really care if it's in person or if it's by Skype, but I really would like to see the board be able to ask them more detailed questions regarding what they are offering us. So that's where I'd like to,
I agree with that, and I would like to make it the person that, or the people that are going to be a part of the search themselves, not just a representative of the firm, but the people involved in the search itself.
That may or may not be difficult, given that a lot of these are national search organizations and have people all over the country constantly conducting interviews. So, the Skype would be a lot more. I will note, without endorsing or not endorsing one way or the other, Ray and Associates was the agency that we used in hiring Dr. Reeby.
But you shouldn't hold that against them.
Probably not. They've gotten a lot better.
The other aspect of this is I would like the board to be thinking of a time frame for this to take place.
And I agree with you. That was my question before, is like, I like the idea that we sit in a room and talk to them, whether it's over Skype or any other way. But yeah, we need a time frame because we don't want to drag that all the way till whenever. So I think if we need to do that, we need to do it soon.
There was a time frame put in the RFP for the folks. If that gives you any guidance on that, kind of looking at, in the October meeting, selecting a firm, then that November, December time probably to do their work with community and board, and then look at advertising and maybe interviews in mid to late February.
Yeah, and I'm talking about like maybe a time frame for us to Skype with them before these steps.
Yeah.
So.
There are 3 firms that have people in Iowa, and they do national searches, and I think that's very, very important. And those 3 pretty much indicated timelines. So there are 3 right on the top that I would say we would interview. There are a couple that I don't know that I really want to waste our time talking with, but if that's not the pleasure of the group, we can talk to all of them. But there are 3.
And I was going to say, right now, I'm dealing with older siblings who are having health issues. And so I understand missing a deadline by a couple hours or even so. And I would have, personally, I would have no objection if we're extending the opportunity to have them come and speak to us, to include the one that was the 24 hours late. But that's just based on where I am right now. So.
And I excluded them simply because they had no experience in Iowa from what it showed in their resume.
Well, and how long was our proposal window? I saw one submitted their application on August 20th, which was more than 2 weeks before the deadline.
I submitted or sent out the RFP the day after your board meeting in August, so the 13th, I think.
Okay, so those folks had almost 3 weeks. Yeah, I don't like the idea of setting a precedent to extend deadlines. I mean, nothing personal against them, I just, it looks like we've already got our work cut out for us in terms of selecting. So it's a very easy weed out tool.
Would someone like to make a motion? Or would you like to have a little more discussion?
I'll make the motion to interview Ray and Associates, McPherson and Grundemeyer as potential firms for selecting a superintendent.
Are we looking to do that all at one session, if possible?
I think that would be best.
That'd be great.
That'd be great.
Next board meeting? Well, I think we need to move faster than that, don't we? Do you have a time frame in your motion, Mary?
Within, say, prior to our next board meeting, which would be within, what is the next board meeting? What's the date?
October 9th.
14th.
Yeah, we'll have it completed by then.
Okay. I'll second that.
And I think, Jerry, you said, you reminded us in our RFP, we said that our time frame was that we would have that selected by October, or maybe I should look at Lisa for that.
Yeah, I have
but
it
that
pulled
was-
up. Interviews by the board prior to October 1st is what it said in the RFP.
Okay.
Interviews
But there's nothing,
of the consulting firm, right?
Right.
Not of, yeah.
right.
Well, I think our schedules, I mean, just listening to Tammy at the beginning of the meeting, it's kind of like people are in and out, so it's going to have to work for everybody.
So if I understand correctly, the motion is to bring Ray, Gunderson, McPherson, those three firms in to do, to have them do a short presentation for the board and allow the board to have some conversation prior to our next board meeting. Our next October, I think, 14th, is that what we just said, our next?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So it's been moved and seconded. Is there any other discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion carries.
Do you want Lisa to do a doodle poll or something?
If you could, I think, to maybe start to put together some, get some dates for the board that would at least work, and then we can, you would reach out right away to the three and let them know.
Are you thinking 45-minute presentation, half hour, what?
I think half an hour max.
Okay.
I mean, traditionally, we have usually second meeting, which we call working meeting, the fourth Monday of each month. If this works for everybody, because it's always on our agenda, that this time blocked for that working meeting.
We didn't
so-
have a work session scheduled for September this time.
Yeah, so if it's possible, if not, we can deal with the different times, so, yeah.
Lisa, are you good with a doodle poll and? Okay.
Yep.
Perfect. All right. Our next agenda item is to appoint an IASB, Iowa Association of School Boards delegate. This is an action item. The Delegate Assembly is scheduled for Wednesday, November 20th. It's at 9 a.m. and it'll be at the Event Center in Des Moines. It is held traditionally the day before the state school board convention is held. In the past, several years, that is something I have volunteered to do. If someone has a burning desire to do that, I'm happy to share that responsibility, and if not, I'm happy to do it
Take it away,
this
Tammy.
year.
Well, I nominate you.
Make a motion.
Tammy.
Maybe I spoke too soon. All right, there was a motion and
Fourth.
a second. John, did you make the motion and the second came from
I'll take it.
Toby? Got it. So the motion has been made to appoint myself for the ISB Delegate Assembly, which will be November 20th in Des Moines. Is there any discussion?
God bless.
Thank you.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion carries. The next item on our agenda is to select the name of the combined middle school. I know the board has had a lot of information over the last several weeks and months from a variety of areas of input, and I suspect that we'll need a little discussion tonight. Who would like to start?
Well, I would like to start. This is, I got basically a lot of communications from many community members, and we held different, obviously, names and suggested names to name the school. And basically what I would like to suggest is the following. I would like to suggest, and it's not necessary it has to be exactly this way, but I would like to suggest Muscatine Susan Clark's Junior High as a name. This is my suggestion based on the many communications that I had with different people, and, it's.
So I would follow up with that, and I agree with you, John. I think the people that are here that have represented Susan Clark and Alexander Clark have a passion and a strong belief, and rightfully so. However, there are others in the community that have accepted the name Muscatine Junior High. So in respect to both sides, this is how I did it. I said Muscatine Junior High in honor of Alexander and Susan B. Clark. And the reason I decided that is I was at the Muskie Early Learning Center, so we have Muskie Early Learning Center, home of the Muskies, and there's all kinds of words there. So we certainly could put that on the building. So again, it was Muscatine Junior High in honor of Alexander and Susan B. Clark.
Is it, I forget her name, it's Susan B., is that correct? Susan V.
V, oh, it's V,
V.
okay.
Thanks.
And I heard different, statements from different people saying, but no one heard of, for example, Susan Clark. And my response was very simple. We are in the business of educating people.
Yeah.
And as schools, that becomes part of what we do and how we introduce the subject, the name. And as I said again, when I suggested that, Mary, what you suggested, I'm fine with that too, as far as we basically combine both together. And I think, I like, as a matter of fact, to ask the board to come up with some sort of a strategy after that to start honoring those who did a lot and provided our school district with a lot of their services, of their support, of everything that they did throughout their life to make, Muscatine School District really a great school district. So, and that's an aside issue that I'm hoping that the board will take on and consider in the future.
Well, we do have a Hall of Honor at the high school, and someone had mentioned, actually said that Susan B. Clark had been inducted. Upon checking this afternoon, Tammy checked, and Susan is not. So, that's something that could be done in the future, so.
Well, with all due respect, I like milkshakes and I like steak, but I don't think I like them together. I don't want a name that's a mouthful. I can't imagine a kid saying, I go to Muscatine, Susan V. and Alec, I've been very moved by the presentations we've seen, and I would just recommend naming Susan Clark or Susan, using whichever middle initial happens to be correct, Clark Junior High. That to me seems to be the thing that's going to be, simplest. If we try and please everybody, I think it's going to give us this ungainly, word salad that is not going to look good on the side of a building or on a schedule that gets printed up or anything like that.
Did I hear you say you moved?
No, I was moved by the
Oh, okay,
presentation.
okay.
I'm not making a motion right now.
I won, sorry.
You're moved.
Randy's ready to go.
No, yeah.
And I agree with Nathan that going a huge series of words is a mouthful. I will be honest, I have gone back and forth, and because I'm a Libra, my scales have to be balanced. So I've listened to all sides. But what I keep coming back to was we have an opportunity to show the historical position that the Muscatine School District was in. And you know, when you really start to think about it, we were on the wrong side until the Supreme Court came in and ruled. I look at that as saying Iowa has always been a progressive state when it comes to what our Constitution says. And I think we should be proud that we were 90 years before the U.S. government decided to go with Brown versus Little Rock. We should honor that historical aspect. And I think this gives us the opportunity. And you know, I look and I've had this conversation with a couple people. So right now, if you look, Muscatine, most of our schools are named after old white men presidents. And some of those historically, you know, there is a movement to remove those names from certain places because of their ties to things that in the 1700s and 1800s were acceptable, but today aren't. So I think this gives us the opportunity to share our historical place in this, and I think it will also offer to us the possibility to say to anyone looking at our district, we are proud of our history. We believe you should be proud of our history, and we would like you to join our school district. And I think naming the school Susan Clark Middle School or junior high, at that point I don't care if it's junior high or middle school, but the name Susan Clark resonates with me. And I think once we make a decision, if we do go that direction, our next responsibility is to make sure our students, our town, our faculty understands the historical aspect of it. And I don't know if, Jerry, at one point I was informed that you and Kent Sissel were in a discussion point where he was going to ask about creating something that would be kind of informative.
Yeah, he has volunteered to help with putting together some sort of instructional unit that would be able to pass that information on, because I think it is one of those where there's a lot of people in the community don't know about the legacy of the Clarks.
And to be honest, I remember watching them moving the Clark House from its original position up the street and onto the hill. And I always thought that was, you know, like, oh my God. So anyway, that's how I feel about this. And so I would make the motion that we move forward with naming the combined middle school after Susan Clark.
Is it going to be a middle school or is it going to be a junior high?
Can we have that as the next discussion? Can we split those two?
As somebody who sat around the table with the committee that worked on this, that was one thing that those that were educators were solid about. Not that they weren't solid about the name, because I asked a lot of questions. And I said, as the person who doesn't live in the world of education, help me understand that difference between middle school and junior high. And to me, it clearly resonated. Junior high was their recommendation.
Well, and if you look it up, Middle school means 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Junior high is 7th and 8th grade. So I'm like Tammy, I understood what was being said.
So then, I will amend my motion to include it be Susan Clark Junior High School.
And I second that.
Sounds good to me.
Is there any other discussion?
I have one thing to say. So I appreciate all the thoughts, and I've received more feedback on this than anything since in the 4 years that I've been on the board. And what I would ask the community is, please reach out like this for other things that affect student education and finances and all those things. Like, there's been more research and more communication about this thing than changing curriculums and closing down buildings and all those things. Like, I would really ask the community to put this amount of effort and thought into some of the other things, because I'll tell you what, this is one of the hardest decisions I'm going to have to vote here, because I literally have half on one side and half on the other of the people that I have talked to. You know, and I understand both, but that's what I really appreciated about all of this, is that I really did get real feedback from both sides, and now we can make a decision about that. So I just want to say that if we can keep this going for other decisions we have to make up here, especially like hiring a new superintendent, the curriculum audit that's coming, it's going to be very powerful, beyond the name. So.
And I would like to add, as someone who ran this motion, I would like to add a couple points here. I see it as not just naming a building. I see it, again, as I said, we are in the business of educating people. So I don't want to just put the sign on that building and don't do anything about it. That will require all of us as a community to work together and start introducing those people who made a huge difference in the history of Muscatine. Hence, that I mentioned before that, I really like to see the board also to get together and start putting some sort of a vision of how can we, for example, consider recognizing those people or those individuals who give a lot to our school district. So it takes a vision to continue with that. So, but I don't want to talk any more than that. I think I did.
I think not only the name on there, but I think the district should go back to every building and figure out some type of plaque that can be placed in all buildings, especially those named after the different presidents or the different members of the society who they've been named after, that says this building is named in the honor of, and give some historical information regarding that. And that would even include, for me, when possible, to find a bust of that person. Because I know at Jefferson, they do have a bust of Thomas Jefferson. And I know that because I purchased it in honor of a retired social worker there. And I think that is something that our district should look at investing. It's not going to be thousands and thousands of dollars. But I think sometimes our kids may not even know who our buildings are named after.
We could feature local artists.
Yeah.
Well, and you say a bust, and I was just thinking, you could have a wall that is dedicated to people that have been in that building, and that maybe has more relevance today than, just a bust does, but neither here nor there. It's a great idea.
And kind of in conjunction with that, because I think what you're really wanting to do is to give some sense of history about the community. And each of the elementaries represent neighborhoods that probably have some historical information about that area. I think of that at the museum, that map you had of all the different. I think that would be a great project, maybe for some kids doing research or whatever, to take a look at that neighborhood.
That'd be cool.
When did it develop? What happened there? What was the history of that? Exactly. And have it in conjunction with that building. So it's not just, well, Benjamin Franklin was a great guy, but this part of Muscatine has a history. I don't know, just...
I like what Mary brought up about the Hall of Honor. Each school could have its own. And people that came from that community or that school or whatever it might have been could have their own Hall of Honor and recognize those people.
Well, I think that I hear loud and clear, we want students and community members to understand if they walk through the door of the Susan Clark Junior High, that they know what that means. I'm not sure that everyone, when they walk into the Clark House, as we call it today, thinks of Susan Clark. I think we just think that's a very common name and not even realizing that's where the original house sat. So I think as we dig into that history and understanding what the family went through, I don't think there is anybody on the board that is not just in complete awe of what that must have been like. And it is an important piece of our history. But I too am a huge believer of, if we put the name on the building and we don't talk about it, we have done no one any service. In fact, we've done a disservice, because we have to talk about it, we have to educate about it, and we need to promote it as our community. And I agree, that is all of us, inside the district and out. So I think that's extremely important.
Something, Tam, you just said, I agree with everything you just said. The education we're talking about specifically, as far as I'm concerned, whose biological dad is African American, isn't just education on who Susan Clark is. It's much more significant, and to people of color, period. I mean, so a curriculum is great, but it's like it's to each one of us and our families, and I just had to say that because I agree with everything you're saying, and yes, we have to let people know who they were, who she is. But what happened back then and what happened in Little Rock, you could argue it was a state thing, you could argue it was a school thing, but it was a fundamental people thing. It was a fundamental people thing. Because there have always been people on both sides. So we have to, it's more serious than that. And you could even stretch it to, we're talking about Susan Clark, but we could talk people of color, people who are disadvantaged. I mean, there are just a lot more to that I hope that name also brings attention to, just as a people.
Well, at the last meeting, we talked about poverty and attendance, and when I really started studying this, here's Alexander Clark, a black man in the 1860s who valued education so much. What a role model for our community. I mean, he told us at that time, education's important. And he wanted his daughter to attend the white school, not the black school, because he knew she'd get a better education.
I'd say just for over 150 years, Muscatine, and specifically the Muscatine School Board, has been the one entity that has stood out in the historical record as being against integration, being against civil rights. And I have no idea who those school board members were back in the 1860s. But it's pretty darn cool to be able to be on the school board that reverses that. You know, if we don't learn our history, we're doomed to repeat it. And at a time when we're tearing our nation apart, we need role models about who united us, who brought us together. And I'm extremely excited and extremely humbled to be able to cast a vote in favor of this.
All right, the motion on the floor is to select the name of the combined middle school to now be Susan Clark Junior High. All of those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 And opposed? And the motion carries.
Thank you all for all of your advocacy.
Thank you.
And don't stop, please.
Yes.
Right.
On all topics.
All topics.
Yeah.
All right, that takes us through our action items for this evening. Our next item is discussion and information related, and our first item is early retirement option or possible early retirement option for fiscal year 2020.
The last few years, we had a discussion item in September, and if the board then has a desire, this can be voted on in October, because we do have a time frame for discussion of this, so that people have the opportunity to decide if they wanted to do or take an early retirement option. So what we are presenting to the board tonight is really it's the same program that we've had for a number of years, 15 years experience, age 55, with the same financial incentive. It would be made available to the employees following the October meeting, with a signed application being due on noon, December 20th, 2019. Part of the reason that this year I think this is a really good idea is that with the combining of schools, we've made the commitment that we're protecting folks' jobs, and I think that's really important. It shows loyalty. It shows that we're committed to our people. But I would also say that if we had some people take early retirement, it would probably help us right size sooner than through other attrition models. So my recommendation is that the board really would give this a strong consideration again next month, and would approve that, because I think it is something that has been helpful to the district. I think it's helped us keep our staff size appropriate. Again, we have not, unlike some districts around us, we have not riffed folks. We've been able to maintain our staffing sizes. We've done, I think, a very good job of protecting hours and benefits for people, and I think that's important. If you want people to be loyal employees, you have to return it. And I think our people we have really good teachers, we have really good classified staff, people that work really hard to make this district perform. And I think this is a good way for us to help them ease into retirement. And I also think it's a good way for us to help manage our staff size.
Jerry, I'm sorry. Yeah, just quick question. I assume we don't know for sure how many
eligible
individuals will be eligible or might.
I can, it's usually around 60.
60?
About 60 are, and I would say, and Jill, you can correct me, I want to say maybe around 20 would be what we typically get. Okay. And that's probably split about 50-50 between teachers, non-teachers. That's kind of just, Jill hasn't run the list yet or anything like that, but it's typically around 60.
While I know this is oftentimes a yearly decision, I do believe that this is something that our past practice should give new hires the desire to stick around for those 30 to 36 years, because we're really not seeing that anymore. And I think knowing that there is a district that offers such an incentive, though it's a yearly decision, should help keep people, because we're one of the few districts that's offering such a wonderful retirement incentive. And it should draw people if they're really saying, education is my heart, education is my soul, I will be there until it's time for me to go. This helps, and it would help us get high-quality people. Not that we don't already have high-quality people.
Well, I think the other thing, too, teaching is physically very demanding. And it's not only physically demanding, it's emotionally draining at times. And as the challenges have become more dramatic, I think the reality of having someone towards the end of their career be able to say, I think it's time, and with an honorable way to move on, I think is a good thing for us. So that's my, and just for the record, so everyone knows, I am not eligible for this, so my promotion of it has nothing to do with me. So.
But there was one point that we did change that rule, to
I'm so
help the
far from 55, it would be, it'd take forever to get there.
We shouldn't give you an incentive to leave today?
Yeah.
Is there any other discussion around early retirement?
And so it will come as an action item in October, and the board then can have more detailed discussion if you'd like, but.
Okay. The last item on our agenda is then announcements, meetings, and events, and it's a long list, so bear with me. We are in the midst of Muskie Homecoming Week, September 9th through the 14th. September 11th, there is a 2-hour early dismissal for teacher professional development. September 16th, 18th, easy for me to say. September 16, 17, and 18 is when the staff that are performing the curriculum audit will actually be in town in Muscatine. There's a parent community interview night at the Administration Center. That will be held on September 16th. That's from 3:30 to 6:30. And Lisa, that is a come when you are available, and I believe there are 15-ish minute time slots. Is that correct?
There are no, you don't have to have an interview's time. There's 4 audit team members, so my understanding, I don't know if there's a time limit or not. but-
Okay.
So each audit member will then take one person.
Okay. So should be relatively short
I would
wait
think
times
so.
though, but it is just a drop-in. It is not an opportunity to schedule a specific time. September 17th will be the staff interview night at the Administration Center, and that's from 3:30 to 6:30. And then September 19th is the board candidate filing deadline. So those papers are due by 5 p.m. Central Standard Time to the Administration Center, 2900 Mulberry. September 24th will be the League of Women Voters hosts a board candidate night. That will be at 7 p.m. That will be here at City Hall. I'm going to back up. Thank you, Lisa, even reminded me. On September 19th, Jesse would not be happy that I missed that. It's the Muskie Early Learning Center. They'll have an open house. So that's Thursday, September 19th. It's from 4:30 to 6:30, so you're welcome to drop in and see the new center. September 24th, League of Women Voters candidate night will be here, 7 p.m. October 9th, there is a 2-hour early dismissal for teacher professional development. October 14th takes us to our next regularly scheduled board meeting, which will be at 7 p.m. and held here at City Hall. And then October 28th will be a board work session. That'll be at 6 p.m. at the Administration Center. I would like to thank my fellow board members tonight. We had a hefty agenda, and we had, I think, some decisions to make that I can safely say I think we each spent a lot of time listening to our constituents throughout the community and a little bit of soul searching. And I can hear the passion in each one of your voices on a variety of topics, and I greatly appreciate that. So we had a great meeting. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll move that we adjourn.
And is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And the motion carries. Thank you very much.